Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 81 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip comes to us from special guest Bilal Moin. Be alive.
Be alive. Just don't read out from a script, learn certain lines and spit them out again. Speak from your mind. If you want to yell, yell. If you want to talk silently. But if you're alive, if you seem to be knowing what you're doing, if you seem to be speaking from the heart and the mind and the soul, I think that's when the audience will really pick up on what you have to say and really understand and feel with you. And I think the best way to get your argument to have both ethos, pathos, and logos is to, at the end of the day, speak from what you believe in, speak from experience, and speak as an individual who has seen, heard, and understood things. And therefore, simply said, be alive.
Stick around. And after the break, we'll hear more from Bilal. Welcome back. I first met Bilal through a forum on Reddit. Bilal is a 16-year-old student and entrepreneur from Mumbai, India. A major focus of his after-school activities is Model UN, where participants take on the role of different countries, study and research issues of concern to those countries, and debate the issues and solutions in forums across the country and around the world. It's really a powerful exercise in history, in studying current events, in thinking logically, and of course, in persuasion. Bilal was a huge fan of Model UN, or MUN, and he wanted to spread Model UN to other communities and help them compete more effectively, so he created the MUNkey Business, a company dedicated to teaching others the ins and outs of Model UN. I wanted to talk with Bilal because he is doing some great work at really an incredibly young age. Speaking, of course, is ageless, especially once you're past toddlerhood, and what he has to say can really help speakers of all ages. I was also interested in his perspective on language, considering the polylingual nature of India. You'll find the links we talk about this week over at 2minutetalktips.com/Bilal. That's BILAL. Now, let's meet Bilal. Well, Bilal, thank you so much for joining me here on 2-Minute Talk Tips this week.
It's my pleasure.
You are my first guest from India, so that is awesome. Seeing the global reach of the power of public speaking here.
Absolutely. It's all over the world.
Especially for someone so young. When did you start speaking in front of groups?
Not really sure. It's always been something I'm doing. It started with small family gatherings and stuff. I was like 6 or 7. But soon I got into, poetry and elocution. But that was just too tame. So I decided to go into something far more interesting. And I got into debates. And eventually I found my footing in Model UNs. And yeah, so I've just been talking ever since in whatever audience, whatever the form. I just like talking in front of people and persuading them and making them believe in stuff. And it's honestly, it's an art. And I want to be really good at it. And I'm trying everything I can to learn and to understand and experiment until, one can become a better orator every single day.
I really appreciate that philosophy of just trying to be a little bit better at it every day.
Exactly.
And it really is awesome that it's a great way to connect with folks, and that you talk about starting, as young as age 6 in front of family, and that is one of the things that's so powerful for folks who have kids and are thinking about how they want to help their kids grow, and being able to encourage the kids to just start as young as possible for doing something like this, even if they choose not to do it later in life, to be able to start getting comfortable with those skills at a young age.
Exactly, because the benefit of starting young is that you can start talking about absolutely anything after a certain point. So you can start young, talking about things you love, you enjoy, going into far more alien territory. And by the end of it, you can talk about anything. So it's a skill, and it's definitely a skill you can use, in corporates, in school, at work. And by the end of the day, it's an essential skill, I believe, every individual should have, at some level at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are a lot of folks out there who say, I may not be good or comfortable with speaking, but I'll let everything else that I do make my point for me. But the problem is, if you don't articulate what it is you are good at and what it is you have done, nobody's going to know.
Exactly, because people may have ideas, they may have absolutely beautiful ideas, but they can codify it into text, they can have it published. But the best way I would say to really get the word out there is through spoken word. And I mean, there's philosophers, there's poets, there's historians who've written some absolutely beautiful work, but it never saw the light of day. But then there were people like, Aristotle or Socrates who spoke out in public, and it's their spoken word that actually, got them recognized and made them symbols of modern day philosophy. So it just basically makes a small point about how you can get really good ideas through spoken word and through public speaking far more or better than written and codified text. So it's definitely a skill every individual should have.
So is that why you like to do it so much, or is there something else you get out of being a speaker?
Honestly, it's the thrill of it, because every audience is different, every topic is different, and it's just, fun experimenting and trying to do whatever you can to get the point through. And also, I'm a man, I like to see and understand what people react and how they react to things. So to me, far more than the actual presentation is how people have reacted to it and the points I've made. And therefore, I just love to note them down, understand what I did wrong, what I did right, and work on it to make it better every single day.
Yeah, it's a great way to start growing and to really start understanding your own points and the things that you yourself believe as well when you start articulating that to other folks.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I find so fascinating, obviously, when we're talking about speaking and the power of language and the power of words, so much that is shaped by the concepts that we have and how we use language on a daily basis. And especially in the United States here, most folks are speaking English, and most folks speak only English. But as many people know, in India is, of course, an incredibly multilingual society and really a collection of multilingual societies. So how does that tremendous diversity in language and culture impact public speaking and public presentation skills?
Absolutely. Like multilingual is an understatement, to be honest. It's like 2,000 mother languages and like 3,000 dialects, and it's confusing at a point. But at the end of the day, public speaking has somehow, just been floated into certain brackets where a certain platform is reserved for certain languages. It just makes it easier. So most debates in cities or most model UNs are mainly in English. It's kind of become the de facto. But then if it's in the parliament or if it's in government, it's either English or it's Hindi. And then if you go to states and speaking there, it becomes a state language. So the lower you go or the deeper you go into the country, the far more specific the language becomes. But at the end of the day, if you speak Hindi or English, you can get through. And another beautiful thing about speaking in India and to an Indian audience is you can somehow merge two languages. You can bring in Hindi words into English. You can bring English words into Hindi. And somehow, make a really strong impact. And this somehow, connects with the audience as well, because they feel like, they're understanding what you're saying, even though you're using a language that they may not be familiar with or something that they're learning or they're working towards. And I think that works. That works really well.
Interesting. So being able to draw on the vocabulary from different languages and pull it together in a way that an audience can still understand it gives you an opportunity for a richer form of communication.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of good examples of this, like Shashi Tharoor. He's a famous Indian member of parliament. He was in the UN for a while. He was about to become Secretary General, like I think 10 years ago. And he gave a very famous speech at the Oxford Union. And in one of his elements of his speech, he starts using a few Hindi words. And this really connected with the Indian audience. Like, it's one of the most widely recognized speeches of the last year from India. And I think one of the sole reasons behind that was not only the content that he was covering, but also the way he, merged his languages to make it sort of impactful to both the Oxford audience as well as the audience sitting back at home. And I think that's a very good use of variation.
Absolutely. One of the things that is really interesting in that I know Grant Baldwin talks about a lot on the Speaker Lab podcast is that when you can customize your presentation for your audience by just adjusting maybe 5% of what you say. So even if it's 95% the same from talk to talk, but you adjust 5% and suddenly your audience feels as though you have written that talk just for them and you really connect.
I think that exclusivity is, the turning point of most speeches or debates. If you're able to connect to even at least 50% of your audience, you have a good speech. I think that's the main deciding factor, because at the end of the day, sure, content matters, but the way an individual reacts to the content is far more important. And if you can make them react to the content in the way you want them to, with even a few minor changes, I completely agree. It's absolutely essential.
Absolutely. And that connection with your audience is one of the things that makes speaking different from just presenting your content in writing.
Exactly.
So you've mentioned Model UN a couple of times,
Right.
and we talked about it in the intro that is something you were doing a tremendous amount of work in. So what is Model UN?
So it is what it sounds like. It's basically a simulation of the United Nations. So you have a bunch of students who represent different countries, and they meet at a forum, and we take up different topics from the UN, the topics that concern the world. It ranges from poverty, healthcare, the war, or North Korea, South Korea. It's a wide range of topics. And what we do is we research, we lobby, we discuss, and we take a country standpoint. So you debate from a completely different perspective than you normally would. You can debate completely against what you believe in. You may debate something that's so outrageously controversial, but you still have to somehow defend your case. And at the end of the day, I feel that MUN is an amalgamation of skills. So you're not only researching, you're not only having a debate, but you're also writing documents. You're sharing resolutions. You're trying to convince an audience that's not only friends or people that you personally know, but people representing, a UK or somebody representing China or a small Pacific island. And at the end of the day, it doesn't only give you good rhetoric and speaking skills. It gives you a really good worldview and geopolitical knowledge. So yeah, that's why I like Model UN. It's something I got into really only 3 or 4 years ago, but since then, it's something I've been pretty obsessed with.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's really a fantastic thinking exercise for students to be pursuing.
Exactly. So what individuals or students normally perceive an MUN to be like is, just diplomacy or international relations. But at the end of the day, it boils down to just simple debate, simple research, and simple resolution writing. And by the end of it, unwittingly, you've got a bunch of skills which you've developed. You've got a bunch of new friends you made, and you know a lot of new facts and a lot of information, which can be used absolutely anywhere. So it is definitely something most schools or students should try out at least once in their lives.
That is awesome. And, one of the things that I found is that, I didn't do Model UN when I was growing up, and it's not quite as big in the United States as it is in other places. I was still part of the high school and university speech and debate teams. And it's the people that I met through speech and debate that I am still connected with here 20, 25 years, 30 years later.
Absolutely. The bonds you make at an MUN, some of them really do last long, because, and a lot of them are in really unusual such circumstances, right? If you're, for example, debating from the perspective of a nation at war with another nation, and you spend the past few days just rebutting each other's points and criticizing each other's arguments and trying to make sure that your country somehow seems superior to the other, it sounds sort of malicious, and it's not a really good situation to be in. But at the end of the day, you realize that, oh, sure, 3 days you've been rebutting each other. But at the end of the day, you have a sort of bond that nobody else in the room has, because you understood what the opposition wanted to say, and you tried to, although they had valid points, change it to make your case. And yeah, you really do make some great friends there. You really do understand a whole lot about what they want to bring through and how you can accommodate it into your arguments. It's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And a very powerful one at a very early age with skills that can really help later in life. So how did you first get into it?
So I changed schools in 8th grade. I joined a new organization, and they had an MUN club. I had no idea what it was about. I just, I'm like, okay, it sounds cool. I'll check it out. So I joined the MUN club. I hated it for the first week because we were just looking into, formal documents and how the UN was formed. It was just basic history. It wasn't really intriguing. But then the minute we got into debate, the minute we got into arguments, and the minute we started doing research from a different perspective, that's what hooked me on. Because suddenly we just went for a bunch of teenagers in a cold computer lab into, delegates from all over the globe discussing issues that, the president spoken about yesterday. It's just kind of empowering at a point, because you feel far more responsible for the world's actions than you do before. and you feel like, you do have some power and you can actually make a change by the end of it. And that, I think, is one of the main reasons why MUN sort of stuck with me since.
You say a couple of really key things there. Obviously, we're talking about, the importance of learning and getting passionate about these arguments, but you talk about it helping you to feel powerful and to help share that perspective. And it's one of the key things about speaking and being able to articulate a view and share that with other folks. There is power in those words.
Right, absolutely. And another great thing, there's definitely power in those words. And while you're still young, you're under 18, people are like, okay, your ideas don't matter, or you still have a lot to learn. But when you start debating, especially on topics such as these, you start to realize that maybe you've come up with a few solutions or a few ideas that they might have not considered, or that seem to be completely unique, or it's a perspective that's been that's taken years to get to, but you're here. And at the end of the day, you just realize that, yes, it's your words, your communication, which brought about a consensus. Sure, it's in a small room of like 50 people. But at the end of the day, this consensus may be the future of a certain conflict or a certain issue. And it does somehow give you a sense of power. And it's not just after a point, it's not just a simple co-curricular activity or a simple friendly debate. It gets far bigger than that after a while, because you start really getting deep into what MUN is about and what it represents.
And when you say that, as a younger person, as a teenager, when you've still got a lot to learn, that doesn't change when you're in your 30s and 40s. I'm hoping that by the time I get into my 50s, I'll have learned all the stuff I'm supposed to have learned. But I have a feeling that's going to continue for a few more decades too.
Absolutely.
So you've not only built a lot of the stuff you're doing in school and speaking around Model UN, you've also gone ahead and built a business around it and own your own business. Can you tell us a bit about that and how it happened?
Right. So that was something I observed over the first year of MUN was, although it was a pretty big thing in Europe, in some parts of the world, it was really growing in India. Like every town, I would say state had at least a few new MUNs popping up every single day. And there was so many delegates just joining. But the issue with MUN lies in the fact that it's kind of technical, because it's based on a very serious rule of procedure. It's got strict rules for how to present documents, for the placement of commas and full stops. It's kind of technical after a point, and it's sort of seen as a barrier to MUN. So when a lot of these delegates join these smaller conferences popping up every day, they go for the conferences, they participate. They don't feel good because they're not able to, participate completely because they can't understand these or haven't learned these rules of procedure. And by the end of the day, they drop MUN. So something I realized was there is no formal education system, especially in a lot of schools in the far more rural or extreme parts of the country, where individuals aren't being trained in some of these rules of procedure. So I just did the first thing I could do, made an Instagram account, came up with the name, the MUNkey Business. I'm pretty proud of that pun. And we basically
I like it. That's the kind of thing that sticks with folks.
Yeah. And we basically contacted a whole bunch of students we could find and advertised our services. And I got together a bunch of my friends, people who have known who MUN and debate all over the country. So they're pros. And I basically got pros in touch with these juniors, and we trained them in everything from rules of procedure to oration, to how to bring about your ideas, how to write documents. And by the end of a few sessions, some of these guys were really, really good. Like they won all the awards that they possibly could at their conferences. And somehow at the end of the day, we realized that although this was great, another fault, or I would say another market we found was because there's so many conferences coming up, there wasn't enough outreach to get as many delegates as they needed. So people didn't have enough signups, simply said. So what we started doing was we started using our audience of the people who were participating in MUNs with us to advertise for conferences all over the country. So there's people paying us to, put up posts and spread the word and make sure that they had enough signups. So at the end of the day, we basically became both an education initiative as well as a marketing strategy. And yeah, I think that's what the MUNkey Business does. We do two very similar things in a very similar field, just helping MUNs get out there and helping students get to MUNs. And our motto just lies in a simple statement: making MUNs simpler for us all. That's all we're doing.
Sort of taking your experience and figuring out how you can empower more people around the country to get the similar experience that you've gotten out of the UN and helping to build your life around that. That is awesome.
Yeah, the most rewarding aspect is of starting my own business, right? Is mainly firstly is the interaction. So I'm speaking to both really good MUN'ers who got large number of awards and they hold trophies and league titles, and then there's people who've never won before. And just watching how these people connect, how they meet on a consensus of common ideas, and how they develop from people who are too stage scared to even step onto a podium to becoming really ruthless, I would say bloodthirsty MUNers. And another thing is it's beautiful seeing how some of these individuals have some really unique ideas, and these are ideas that even people who have been MUNning for a very long time haven't really thought of. But these people, once they get a voice, a medium to communicate, they really bring it through, and that's absolutely fantastic. And also, it's interesting because we see so many different conferences on a daily basis, just trying to advertise and get the word out there. And each of them are led by such dedicated teams. There's so many people who really want to do something for the local community, but really can't. So they're trying to make MUNs for themselves, and they're trying to get out there to their own community. And it's sort of, encouraging. It makes you think, what can you do for your own community if someone in a small town somewhere is doing something else for his? And it's sort of connect. It's sort of a connect after a point. And it's a very interesting, very empowering opportunity.
It also gives you an opportunity to learn all sorts of skills very early on that other people may never pick up in their lives. What's been the most challenging thing about running your own business?
I would say it's tackling work in school mainly because a lot of the work, especially the training aspects, take quite a bit of time. It's around half an hour or an hour a day. So we sort of reduced it down to make it only weekends or only in vacations. And otherwise, aside from the time management, it's tricky finding people who would actually be convinced to learn from you. Because after a point of time, people are like, I'm not going to spend money. It's not a skill I believe in. It really doesn't hold value. It is public speaking. So I think making people, especially people who haven't had an experience of oration and public speaking before, making them jump the barrier, making them understand the benefits and the importance of public speaking in life is sort of a barrier that we face. But I think once individuals realize how important it is to them and what they can be if they have the power of their own voice and their own ideas, then I think most people really do believe that they can be who they really want to be, and therefore they choose our services. And yeah, that is one of the most difficult things, getting people to, transcend into the world of debate and speaking.
Absolutely. Going out and sort of doing that marketing and finding those customers and convincing them that this is something they need and helping them understand how this will benefit them later in life elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So for folks who are afraid to go ahead and speak in front of a group, and there are so many people out there who really struggle with getting up in front of a group of people to share their view. And I know it's been said in the US that it is one of the biggest fear. In many cases, many people say they're more afraid of speaking than of dying and things like that. Is that the same experience folks in your country have, and what advice do you have for folks who are afraid to speak in front of a group?
Right. So stage fright is kind of universal, I believe. Like every individual at some point of their lives is scared of standing up on a stage. But I think that once people transcend that barrier, once they get into the world, they really do understand how it's entertaining, empowering, interesting. And so what recommendations do I have? What advice do I have? Mainly, I think speak your mind. Speak in what you believe in. So start off slow. If you like cooking, start talking about who the best chef is or what kind of recipes you like. If you like politics, get into a political debate and go from your comfort zone. Start talking with your friends about these topics, start expanding your horizons, and then start talking about absolutely something completely different about, what the best mobile phone in the market is or whether Microsoft will take over Apple. And by the end of the day, you have an arsenal of points. And by the end of the day, you have an arsenal of ideas. And after you're done with all of this, you soon realize that, yes, you have developed public speaking and you're not scared of speaking anymore. And that's when I think to step on a stage and speak your voice and really take the title of, a public speaker.
That is That's a great way of approaching it. What I like about that is that sort of aligns with some of the things that I talk about with that a lot too. Is that when you talk about start with your passion and start with the things you're focused on, ultimately it's, I tell folks, it's not about you. It's about your message and it's about your audience. And you want to focus on your goal and what it is you want to share with them and how that can benefit your audience.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta get out of your own way when it comes to that.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be limited to the topics you know or the ideas you believe in. You should really explore absolutely everything under the sun.
Right. So here you are, 16, CEO of your own business, doing Model UN all over the place and doing very well at that, being on podcasts around the world and sharing all this stuff. And so I wonder then, what's next for you? What are you working on now, and what are you hoping to do over the next 5-10 years or so?
I have a few ideas. I have a few projects I'm working on in the real estate industry, because in India, especially in Mumbai and Delhi, we have cities that are so crowded. It's difficult for small businesses to find a footing in the retail industry. So I'm trying to consider a plan where, you could have a retail space which is ever transforming to accommodate for different businesses and different industries at different times of the day. But it's something I'm just working on. But otherwise, in the next 5-10 years, I'm not sure. I'll probably be studying economics or politics and trying to find my footing in the world and making the world a better place. I know it's cliche, but it's, I think, something that we as individuals, as public speakers and people around the world can actually do if you put our mind to it. So that's something I'm pretty excited to be doing in the future.
Well, fantastic. So if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
So if you want to find out my other projects are, you can find me on LinkedIn. My username is the Bilal Moin, TheBillelmyn. And you can contact me there. I can answer any queries you have. You can hit me up if you have any ideas. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. And we'll have those links also over at 2minutetalktips.com/Bilal. I think this has been fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. It's absolutely been my pleasure.
Bilal has an interesting perspective on speaking and rhetoric that seems well grounded in traditional academic practice, which makes perfect sense considering his background. So what did you think of this chat? Let us know in the comments over at 2minutetalktips.com/Bilal. Check out Bilal's company or connect with him via LinkedIn. You can find those links also at 2minutetalktips.com/Bilal. Be sure to subscribe to 2 Minute Talk Tips in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.